The air in the Xing family memorial hall hung heavy, thick with the scent of sandalwood incense and the unspoken tension of a family in mourning. Xing Jingxing stood by the ornate coffin, his face pale, the sharp angles of his jaw accentuated by the flickering candlelight. He clutched the autopsy report in his hand, the crisp paper crinkling under his grip. Cerebral hemorrhage. That's what the official report stated. Yet, a disquiet nod at him, a persistent whisper of doubt that refused to be silenced. His grandfather, a man of iron will and robust health, struck down so suddenly. It felt wrong. He stared at the still form within the coffin, the familiar face now unsettlingly placid. A phantom ache pulsed in his chest, a strange blend of grief and suspicion. He hadn't shed a tear since the news broke. Perhaps it was shock, or perhaps it was something else entirely, something cold and unsettling taking root in the hollow of his heart. A sudden commotion shattered the solemn silence. A woman, dressed in simple, almost austere clothing, pushed past the throng of mourners, her gaze fixed on the coffin. Bai Lu, ever vigilant, moved to intercept her. "Madam, this is a private affair," he stated, his voice low but firm. She paused, her eyes, dark and intense, meeting Bai Lu's. "Private?" A wry smile played on her lips. When the life of the deceased hangs in the balance, privacy becomes a rather insignificant detail. Jingxing's attention snapped to the woman. He felt an inexplicable pull, a curiosity tinged with unease. Who was this woman? And what could she possibly mean? "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice strained. "Have you confirmed the autopsy report?" she countered, ignoring Bai Lu's attempts to steer her away. "The person lying in the coffin is not dead at all." A murmur rippled through the hall. Jingxing felt a surge of anger. This was absurd, disrespectful. Yet, the woman's unwavering gaze held his, a strange mix of confidence and sadness. It was disconcerting. "This is preposterous," old Mrs. Xing declared, her voice laced with outrage. "Guards, remove this woman." The woman didn't flinch. 99,999, that is all I ask. And I will return your patriarch to you." The audacity of her demand left Jingxing speechless. 99,999, it wasn't an exorbitant sum for the Xing family, but the implication, the sheer impossibility of her claim. He glanced at Bai Lu, a silent question passing between them. Bai Lu shook his head almost imperceptibly, his expression unreadable. "You dare to extort us at my father's memorial?" Old Mrs. Xing's voice trembled with fury. "Extortion?" The woman tilted her head, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "No, Madam Xing. This is an offer. An opportunity to rectify a grave mistake. Observe." With a swift, unexpected movement, she reached towards the deceased's wrist, her fingers brushing against the pale skin. Jingxing's breath caught in his throat. He felt a sudden, irrational urge to stop her, yet he remained rooted to the spot. His pulse, the woman stated, her voice calm and steady, though faint, is still present. Furthermore, she continued, her fingers now tracing the line of Mr. Xing's jaw, noticed the subtle cyanosis around the lips. This is not consistent with a cerebral hemorrhage. This indicates a potent neurotoxin, one that mimics the symptoms of a stroke but leaves the victim in a state of suspended animation. Jingxing's mind raced. Neurotoxin? Impossible. The autopsy, he felt a cold dread creeping up his spine. Could it be true? Could his grandfather still be alive? The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through him, a desperate flicker of hope amidst the suffocating grief. Xia Xiaowan watched the unfolding drama with a detached fascination. This unexpected turn of events was intriguing. She had come to the memorial with her father and sister, Xia Xiaoguang, expecting nothing more than a display of the Xing family's wealth and influence. Now, this mysterious woman, with her outrageous claim and uncanny medical knowledge, had thrown everything into chaos. She glanced at Xia Xiaoguang, whose usually composed demeanor seemed strained, a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. Interesting. Very interesting. Xia Tian, their father, shifted uneasily beside Xianwan, murmuring, "This is outrageous. What is this woman trying to pull?" Xianwan simply shrugged, her gaze fixed on the woman by the coffin. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. This woman, whoever she was, possessed a strange air of authority, a quiet confidence that belied her simple attire. Jinxing turned to the family doctor, his voice sharp. "Dr. Li, is this possible? Could the autopsy have been wrong?" Dr. Li stammered, his face pale. "You don't understand. The results were clear." Cerebral hemorrhage. The woman by the coffin let out a soft sigh. "The human body is a complex tapestry, Dr. Li. A skilled weaver can create illusions, mimicking one pattern with another. The toxin I speak of is rare, its effects easily mistaken for natural causes." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the assembled mourners. "I am Jisher. And I can save him." The name hung in the air, charged with an almost mythical resonance. Jisher. A whisper of a legend, a phantom healer spoken of in hushed tones. A master of forgotten arts, capable of feats that defied conventional medicine. Jinxing stared at her, his mind reeling. Could this be the legendary Jisher? Here, in his family's memorial hall. Bai Lu stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of the ceremonial sword at his hip. "Young master, this is clearly a charlatan. Allow me to." Jinxing raised a hand, silencing him. He felt a strange pull towards this woman, a sense of destiny intertwining with the swirling chaos of the moment. He looked at his grandmother, her face a mask of disbelief and fury, then back at Jisher, whose serene expression held a hint of unwavering determination. He took a deep breath, the scent of sandalwood heavy in the air, and made a decision. "Give her what she wants," he said, his voice low but firm. "Let her try." The implications of his words rippled through the hall, a shockwave of whispers and gasps. The future of the Xing family, the fate of their patriarch, now rested in the hands of this enigmatic woman, this Jisher, who claimed to hold the power of life and death in her grasp. And as Jinxing gazed into her eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more profound, something that would irrevocably change their lives forever. A servant rushed out to fetch the money, his face etched with bewilderment. The tension in the room was palpable, a taut string stretched to its breaking point. Then, almost as an afterthought, Jisher added, "There's one more condition. I will marry Xing Jinxing once the patriarch is revived." The hall erupted into utter pandemonium. The air in the Xing family's memorial hall hung thick with the cloying scent of lilies and the hushed murmur of mourners. A single, discordant note sliced through the somber symphony, the insistent voice of the woman. Her words, sharp and clear, echoed off the polished marble floors, each syllable a hammer blow against the carefully constructed facade of grief. "I'm telling you, he's not dead." Xing Jinxing felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He stared at the woman, her face a blur through the shimmering veil of his own unshed tears. His grandfather, the formidable patriarch of the Xing family, gone. A cerebral hemorrhage, the doctors had said, swift and merciless. But this woman, her words pricked at something deep within him, a nascent suspicion he tried to bury beneath the weight of his sorrow. "This is preposterous." His mother's voice, brittle with outrage, cut through the silence. "This woman is clearly delusional. Security, remove her." Xing Jinxing's jaw clenched. He saw the flicker of uncertainty in Bai Lu's eyes, the subtle hesitation before he moved to obey. "Wait," Jinxing said, his voice raspy. He needed to understand. He owed his grandfather that much. The woman's gaze locked with his, a strange intensity burning in her dark eyes. They lied to you, young Master Sheng. Your grandfather can be saved. Jinxing's breath hitched. Saved? Was it possible? A sliver of desperate hope, irrational yet potent, unfurled within him. This charade has gone on long enough, his mother hissed, her fingers digging into his arm. Don't let this woman's ludicrous claims tarnish your grandfather's memory. Jinxing felt the pressure, the weight of expectation, the suffocating need to maintain appearances. But something in the woman's unwavering gaze held him captive. It wasn't just the audacity of her claim, but the unshakable conviction in her voice. How can you be so sure? Jinxing asked, his voice barely a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken doubts and desperate longing. The woman smiled, a slow, enigmatic curve of her lips. I know things, young Master Sheng. Things that others would prefer to remain hidden. A chill snaked down Jinxing's spine. What was she implying? What secrets lay buried beneath the polished veneer of the Sheng family? She's just trying to extort money, Xia Xiaoguang's voice, laced with disdain, sliced through the tension. Sheng Jinxing glanced at her, the perfect picture of composure, her grief seemingly controlled and appropriate. But something about her unwavering calm struck him asoft. He'd always found her unerringly perfect, her emotions always carefully calibrated, her every move calculated. The woman turned to Xia Xiaoguang, her eyes narrowing. Extortion. I'm offering a miracle, not demanding a ransom. Her words were soft, but the underlying steel was unmistakable. The air crackled with unspoken accusations. The argument escalated, voices rising and falling, accusations and denials echoing in the cavernous hall. Xia Tian, Xiaoguang's father, joined the fray, his voice booming with paternal protectiveness. My daughter is right. This is outrageous. We will not be intimidated by your baseless accusations. His words were meant to be a show of strength, but Jinxing detected a tremor of unease beneath the bluster. If I found out someone deliberately delayed the treatment time and killed my grandpa, Jinxing's voice, low and dangerous, silenced the room. He paused, the unspoken threat hanging heavy in the air. Don't let me repeat it a second time. His gaze swept over the faces of his family, searching for any flicker of guilt, any sign of deception. His mother's face paled, her lips pressed into a thin line. Xia Xiaoguang averted her eyes, a faint flush creeping up her neck. And Xia Xiaomuan she stood silently, her expression unreadable, a faint smile playing on her lips. The woman, Jisher, watched the unfolding drama with an unnerving calmness. She seemed to be drawing strength from the chaos, her eyes glittering with an almost supernatural knowing. Jinxing's gaze returned to her, a question forming in his mind. Who was this woman? And how could she be so certain? Suddenly, Jisher spoke, her voice cutting through the tense silence. Young Master Sheng, she said, her gaze intense, I am Jisher. I am here to save your grandfather, and to fulfill a destiny that binds us together. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Jisher. The legendary healer, spoken of in hushed whispers, a figure shrouded in myth and rumor. Jinxing felt a jolt of disbelief, followed by a surge of something akin to hope. Before anyone could react, Xia Xiaomuan stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. I can corroborate Jisher's claims. I know what happened to Mr. Sheng. All eyes turned to her. She met their gazes unflinchingly, a strange determination hardening her features. It wasn't a cerebral hemorrhage. He was poisoned. The word hung in the air, a venomous whisper. The carefully constructed facade of grief began to crumble, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Accusations flew, fingers pointed, and the carefully orchestrated memorial service descended into chaos. Amidst the turmoil, Jishe moved towards the seemingly lifeless body of Mr. Sheng. Jingxing watched, his heart pounding in his chest, a strange premonition settling over him. This woman, this Jishe, was about to change everything. And in the midst of the unfolding drama, Xia Xianwan quietly announced, "Young Master Sheng and I are to be wed." The room fell silent, the shock of her words momentarily eclipsing even the revelation of murder. Jingxing stared at her, his mind reeling. What game was she playing? What secrets did she hold? The answers, he knew, lay buried deep within the heart of the Sheng family, waiting to be unearthed. The air in the Sheng family's memorial hall hung thick with the cloying scent of lilies and the stagnant weight of unspoken suspicions. Whispers, like moths fluttering against a flickering candle flame, danced around the extravagant coffin that held the patriarch, Mr. Sheng. Jishe, the woman who had disrupted the somber proceedings with her outrageous claim, stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the polished wood as if she could see through its lacquered surface. Her presence, an unsettling ripple in the carefully constructed facade of grief, seemed to amplify the tension that crackled in the room. Sheng Jingxing felt a cold dread creep up his spine. His grandfather, the formidable pillar of the Sheng family, reduced to a silent form within that ornate box. The official diagnosis, cerebral hemorrhage, had seemed swift, almost too convenient. Now, this woman, with her unsettlingly calm demeanor and outlandish claims of revival, had planted a seed of doubt that he couldn't ignore. He glanced at his mother, old Mrs. Sheng, her face a mask of controlled fury. The delicate jade bracelet on her wrist trembled slightly, betraying the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. "This is preposterous." Old Mrs. Sheng's voice, though strained, carried the weight of her authority. "This woman is clearly a charlatan, trying to take advantage of our grief. Security, remove her." Jishe didn't flinch. Her eyes, dark and deep as ancient wells, met old Mrs. Sheng's unwavering gaze. "I understand your skepticism, Madam Sheng," she said, her voice low and steady, each word meticulously placed. "But I assure you, I can prove my claim. Mr. Sheng is not beyond saving." A flicker of something, perhaps pity, perhaps something more knowing, passed across her face. Sheng Jingxing's internal conflict intensified. He wanted to dismiss her, to cling to the familiar comfort of grief, but a sliver of hope, irrational yet persistent, had taken root. What if, by some miracle, she was telling the truth? He thought of his grandfather's booming laughter, his sharp mind, his unwavering presence. Could he truly be gone? The image of his grandfather, lying still and cold, was a wound that refused to close. He found himself drawn to Jishe's unwavering certainty, a beacon in the swirling fog of uncertainty. Bai Lu, ever vigilant at Sheng Jingxing's side, shifted uneasily. "Young master, this is madness. We cannot entertain this woman's delusions." His voice was a low murmur, laced with concern. Sheng Jingxing felt the weight of Bai Lu's loyalty, the pressure to conform to the expected response. But the gnawing doubt remained. He studied Jishe's face, searching for a hint of deception, but found only an unsettling calmness. Xia Xianwan, standing near the back of the hall, watched the unfolding drama with a detached curiosity. She had initially come with the intention of securing a financial settlement, using her fabricated connection to Mr. Sheng as leverage. But this sudden turn of events had piqued her interest. This Jishe, with her enigmatic aura and audacious claims, was a wild card. Xia Xianwan's mind, sharp and calculating, began to assess the potential benefits of this unexpected chaos. Perhaps, she thought, this could work in her favor. Her sister, Xia Xiaoguang, stood beside their father, her face pale and strained. Unlike Xia Xianwan's cool detachment, Xia Xiaoguang's anxiety was palpable. She wrung her hands nervously, her eyes darting between Jishe and the coffin. Her carefully constructed mask of grief seemed to be cracking under the pressure. Xia Tian, their father, sensed his younger daughter's distress. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his expression a mixture of concern and paternal protectiveness. "Xiaoguang, don't worry. This woman is just a con artist. We won't let her disturb your grandfather's rest." He tried to sound reassuring, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he, a man accustomed to navigating the treacherous waters of business dealings, couldn't quite shake off the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. The tension in the hall reached a fever pitch. The whispers escalated, morphing into a cacophony of speculation and disbelief. The Xing family, normally a bastion of unity and control, was fracturing under the weight of Jisher's audacious claim. Xing Jinxing drew a sharp breath. The suffocating weight of tradition and expectation pressed down on him, but the desire for truth, for justice, burned hotter. He looked at the coffin, at the silent form within, and then back at Jisher, her unwavering gaze holding his. He made his decision. He would gamble on the impossible. "Let's open the coffin and take a look," Xing Jinxing said, his voice cutting through the noise like a shard of glass. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to him, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of morbid curiosity reflected in their depths. The air crackled with anticipation, as if the very walls of the memorial hall held their breath, waiting for the truth to be revealed. The heavy scent of incense choked the air, thick and cloying, a suffocating blanket over the hushed whispers that rippled through the Xing family's memorial hall. Xing Jinxing stood rigid, a statue carved from grief and dawning suspicion. His knuckles, white against the dark wood of his cane, threatened to splinter the polished surface. The woman, this enigmatic intruder with her unsettlingly calm demeanor, had sown a seed of doubt, a seed that had rapidly taken root in the fertile ground of his unease. Could he still be alive? The very thought felt like a betrayal of his grief, a disrespect to the solemn rituals unfolding around him. Yet, a flicker of desperate hope, as fragile as a butterfly's wing, stirred within the desolate landscape of his heart. The silence deepened, pressing down like the weight of the ancestral portraits lining the walls, their painted eyes seeming to observe the unfolding drama with centuries-old wisdom. Bai Lu moved with a practiced efficiency, his face an impassive mask as he directed the servants to open the coffin. Jinxing's breath hitched, a strangled sound lost in the sudden intake of breath that swept through the hall. The world seemed to tilt, the scent of sandalwood and lilies warring with the metallic tang of fear that coated his tongue. He told himself this was madness, a cruel charade orchestrated by this woman. But a part of him, a primal, instinctual part, yearned for the impossible. The heavy lid creaked open, revealing the still form within. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Jinxing's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Mr. Xing lay there, his face ashen, his features still and composed. Dead. Just as Jinxing had believed. A wave of despair washed over him, cold and numbing. Had he allowed himself to be manipulated, played like a puppet by this stranger's outlandish claims? Shame mingled with the renewed grief, a bitter cocktail that burned in his throat. But then, the woman moved. She stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful, strangely at odds with the somber atmosphere. Her hand, delicate yet firm, reached out and touched Mr. Xing's wrist. A hush fell over the assembly, so profound that the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner became a deafening metronome. Jinxing watched, mesmerized, a strange premonition tingling at the edges of his awareness. Its purple-gold blood, the woman's voice, clear and resonant, cut through the silence. Which is rare in the world. Her words hummed in the air, heavy with an unspoken significance. Purple-gold blood. What could that possibly mean? Jinxing's mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. He had never heard of such a thing. Yet, there was an unshakable conviction in her tone, a certainty that sent a shiver down his spine. The woman continued, her gaze sweeping over the assembled family members, lingering for a moment on Xia Shaoguang, whose face had paled to a sickly shade of white. The last person the old man saw before he fell ill was indeed her. Jingxing's gaze snapped towards Xia Shaoguang. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. His suspicion, a dormant ember, flared into a raging fire. Could it be true? Could this seemingly innocent young woman, the daughter of a respected family friend, be involved in his grandfather's sudden decline? The thought was repulsive, yet the evidence, however circumstantial, pointed towards her. His internal monologue raged. She was the last one to see him. But why? What possible motive could she have? His mind conjured up images of whispered conversations, clandestine meetings, a hidden agenda simmering beneath the surface of polite social interactions. He remembered Xia Shaoguang's seemingly genuine concern, her tearful condolences. Had it all been an act, a carefully crafted performance to conceal her guilt? The air crackled with tension. Whispers erupted anew, like dry leaves rustling in a sudden gust of wind. Accusations, veiled and not so veiled, were flung like daggers across the room. Xia Shaoguang's father, Xia Tian, stepped forward, his face a mask of disbelief and burgeoning anger. This is preposterous. My daughter would never, he began, but his voice trailed off, his confidence faltering under the weight of the woman's unwavering gaze. Old Mrs. Sheng, Jingxing's mother, stepped forward, her hand trembling as she gripped his arm. Jingxing, she whispered, her voice tight with anxiety, be careful. This woman, she could be dangerous. He felt the pressure of her fingers on his arm, a silent plea for caution. He understood her fear. This woman was an unknown entity, a disruptive force that threatened the delicate balance of their family. But Jingxing was driven by something deeper than familial obligation, deeper than the desire to maintain appearances. He needed to know the truth. He owed it to his grandfather, to the memory of the man who had shaped him, guided him, loved him unconditionally. He nodded curtly to his mother, his gaze fixed on the woman who held the key to the mystery. Who are you? He demanded, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. And how do you know all this? A flicker of something unreadable amusement. Sadness crossed the woman's face. They call me Jisher, she said, her voice soft, yet carrying an undeniable authority. The name hung in the air, charged with an almost mythical resonance. Jisher. The legendary healer, spoken of in hushed whispers, her skills bordering on the supernatural. Jingxing had dismissed the stories as folklore, old wives' tales meant to frighten children. But now, looking into her eyes, he felt a creeping sense of awe. He had scoffed at legends, but now, a legend stood before him, challenging everything he thought he knew. The revelation of Mr. Sheng's unusual blood and the accusation against Xia Shaoguang sent shockwaves through the already tense atmosphere. The whispers escalated into open murmurs, a cacophony of disbelief and speculation. Jingxing's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of the unfolding drama. He felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were observing the scene from a distance, watching the lives of his family unravel before his eyes. And in the center of it all, Jisher, the mysterious healer, stood serene and composed, the eye of the storm, holding the fate of the Sheng family in her hands. The air in the Sheng family home, thick with the lingering scent of incense and the phantom echo of mourning, had shifted. It vibrated now with a different kind of tension, a taut string stretched between disbelief and a fragile hope. Sheng Jingxing, his hand throbbing where the glass had shattered, stared at Jisher. Her touch, cool and feather-light against his skin, seemed to draw the stinging pain out of him like smoke. He felt a strange calmness seep into him, a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within the family. She's different, he thought, the words forming unbidden in his mind. Unlike anyone I've ever met. His gaze lingered on her face, the delicate curve of her jaw, the way her brows furrowed in concentration. Even amidst the chaos, she possessed an unnerving serenity. Jisher, unaware of the scrutiny, focused on the task at hand. The cut, though deep, was clean. He needs proper care, she mused, her fingers deftly applying a poultice she had quickly concocted. Her movements were economical, precise, each gesture betraying a deep understanding of the human body. The scent of herbs, pungent yet soothing, filled the air, a sharp contrast to the cloying sweetness of the funeral flowers. She glanced up at Xing Jinxing, her dark eyes meeting his. "This will heal quickly," she assured him, her voice low and steady, like a quiet stream cutting through stone. "But avoid strenuous activity for a few days." Xing Jinxing nodded, mesmerized by the intensity of her gaze. "She looks at me as though she sees right through me," he realized, a shiver running down his spine. He'd spent his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, people who wore masks of deference while plotting their next move. But this woman, there was a raw honesty in her eyes that unsettled him. The quiet murmurings of the Xing family members, gathered in small clusters around the room, pricked at Xing Jinxing's awareness. Their whispers, like the rustling of dry leaves, carried undercurrents of suspicion and fear. Their eyes darted between him and Jisher, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. He could feel their judgment, their unspoken questions hanging heavy in the air. "This charade needs to end," a sharp voice cut through the hushed atmosphere. Xia Xiaoguang, her face pale and composed, stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Jisher. "We've indulged your theatrics long enough. My grandfather is dead. Accept it and leave." Her words, though calm, dripped with venom. Xing Jinxing felt a surge of anger. How dare she? He thought, his hand instinctively clenching. He opened his mouth to retort, but Jisher placed a gentle hand on his arm, silencing him. Her touch, surprisingly firm, conveyed a silent command. He looked at her, surprised by her calmness. Jisher turned her gaze towards Xia Xiaoguang, her expression unreadable. "You are wrong," she stated, her voice quiet yet unwavering. "Your grandfather is not dead." A ripple of gasps went through the room. Old Mrs. Xing clutched her chest, her face ashen. Xia Tian, his eyes darting between his daughters, shifted uneasily. Bai Lu stood beside Xing Jinxing, his face impassive, his eyes watchful. "Enough of this madness." Xia Xiaoguang's voice rose, laced with desperation. "This woman is a fraud. She's just trying to extort money from us." Jisher's eyes narrowed. With a swift, almost imperceptible movement, she produced a small, intricately carved wooden box. She opened it, revealing a single, dried herb. The scent, sharp and unfamiliar, filled the air. "This," she said, holding the box aloft, "is the antidote to the poison that has paralyzed your grandfather." A stunned silence fell over the room. Xia Xiaoguang's carefully constructed composure cracked. Her eyes, wide with panic, darted towards her sister, Xia Xianwan, who stood silently observing the scene, a strange, knowing look on her face. The events that followed unfolded with the dizzying speed of a collapsing house of cards. Jisher, with a calm authority that belied her delicate frame, systematically exposed Xia Xiaoguang's plot. The meticulously crafted narrative of a sudden cerebral hemorrhage crumbled under the weight of Jisher's evidence, revealing a chilling tale of greed and ambition. The poison, a rare and potent neurotoxin, had been administered slowly, meticulously, over weeks, disguised within Mr. Xing's daily tea. Xia Tian stared at his youngest daughter, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. The protective shield he had always held up for her shattered, leaving him exposed to the raw, ugly truth. Old Mrs. Sheng, her initial skepticism replaced by a dawning comprehension, sobbed quietly, her frail body trembling. Xing Jinxing, his mind reeling from the revelations, watched the scene unfold, his heart a leaden weight in his chest. This family, my family, built on a foundation of lies, he realized, the thought a bitter pill to swallow. The weight of his grandfather's near death, the betrayal, the years of deception, pressed down on him, threatening to suffocate him. He turned towards Xia Xiaoguang, his voice low and dangerous. "The Xing family has raised you for so many years," he began, each word dripping with icy contempt. "This is how you repay him." He paused, his eyes locking onto hers, the unspoken accusation hanging heavy in the air. "I will marry your sister." The words, spoken with the finality of a death knell, echoed through the room, silencing the murmurs and gasps. Xia Xiaoguang stared at him, her face contorted in a mixture of shock, fear, and disbelief. Xia Xiaomuan, her expression unreadable, met Xing Jinxing's gaze, a flicker of something unidentifiable passing through her eyes. Xia Tian's face crumpled, the final blow to his pride and reputation delivered with surgical precision. The wedding announcement, a stark counterpoint to the somber atmosphere of the memorial service, hung in the air, a promise of a new beginning, a new power dynamic, a new era for the Xing family. The future, shrouded in uncertainty, stretched before them, a tangled web of secrets, lies, and unforeseen consequences. The air in the Xing family home, once thick with the scent of incense and lilies, now hung heavy with the metallic tang of betrayal. Xing Jinxing stood by the window, the cityscape a blurred canvas against the backdrop of the setting sun. He could still hear the echoes of Xia Xiaoguang's strangled confessions, the raw disbelief in his mother's voice, the unsettling calm in Jisher's eyes. His grandfather's death had ripped a hole in the fabric of their family, a void now filled with the bitter truth of murder. He clenched his fist, the jade ring on his finger pressing into his skin, a constant reminder of the weight of his name, his responsibility. "This was not how I envisioned mourning my grandfather," he thought, the bitterness twisting in his gut. To unearth a viper in our own nest, the chaos had subsided, replaced by a chilling silence. The guests had dispersed, their whispers turning into rumors that would soon spread through the city like wildfire. His mother, old Mrs. Sheng, sat on the antique rosewood chair, her face etched with a weariness that went beyond grief. The events of the day had aged her, stolen the fire from her usually sharp gaze. He wanted to comfort her, to offer some semblance of solace, but the words seemed to choke in his throat. What could he say that wouldn't sound hollow, meaningless in the face of such devastating truth? Bai Lu, ever the shadow, stood silently by the door, his presence a reassuring constant in the swirling vortex of emotions. Xing Jinxing met his gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Bai Lu's unwavering loyalty was a lifeline in this treacherous sea. "He's the only one I can truly rely on now," Jinxing thought, the realization settling like a stone in his chest. Across the room, Xia Xiaomuan stood apart, a fragile figure amidst the wreckage. He watched her, a flicker of something akin to understanding igniting within him. She had been instrumental in exposing her own sister, a sacrifice that must have torn her apart. He could see the remnants of that struggle in the tightness of her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly. She had walked into their lives like a whirlwind, a disruptive force that had ultimately cleansed their home of a hidden poison. "She's not what I thought she was," he realized, the initial suspicion giving way to a grudging respect. Xia Tian, their father, stood beside her, his face a mask of shame and defeat. He had clung so fiercely to the illusion of Xia Xiaoguang's perfection, blinded by his own desires. The truth had shattered that illusion, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. The once proud man now looked broken, his shoulders slumped, his eyes devoid of their usual arrogance. He had lost one daughter to the darkness and the other, well, that remained to be seen. Jinxing, his mother's voice, raspy and low, broke the silence. He turned to her, his heart heavy with unspoken words. "What will become of us now?" He crossed the room, kneeling before her, taking her frail hand in his. We will endure, mother. We will rebuild. The truth, however painful, has set us free. He looked toward Xia Xianwan, a decision solidifying within him. A decision born not of love, not yet, but of necessity, of a strange sense of intertwined destinies. It was a gamble, a leap of faith into the unknown, but he knew, with a certainty that surprised even himself, that it was the only way forward. He stood up, his gaze sweeping across the room, finally settling on Xia Xianwan. There's something I need to do. The air thickened with anticipation. He could feel the weight of their gazes, the unspoken questions hanging in the silence. He walked towards Xia Xianwan, each step echoing the monumental shift in their lives. He reached her, his hand gently cupping her chin, tilting her face up to meet his. Her eyes, wide and filled with a mixture of apprehension and something else he couldn't quite decipher, held his gaze. In that moment, the remnants of grief and anger seemed to dissipate, replaced by a strange sense of calm. This is right, he thought, the conviction settling deep within his bones. This is the path, however unexpected. He turned to Bai Lu, a silent command passing between them. Bai Lu nodded, his movements swift and precise as he retrieved two intricately carved jade pendants from a locked cabinet. These were family heirlooms, symbols of commitment and belonging, usually reserved for formal betrothal ceremonies. The room held its breath. Jinxing took the pendants from Bai Lu, his fingers tracing the smooth, cool jade. He held one out to Xia Xianwan. She looked at it, then at him, her eyes questioning. He met her gaze, his voice steady and clear. Xia Xianwan, he said, the words echoing in the silent room, will you accept this token of my commitment? Will you become my wife? The silence that followed was deafening. He saw the flicker of surprise, the hint of fear, but beneath it, a nascent strength, a quiet acceptance. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as she took the pendant from his hand. The cool jade felt strangely warm against her skin. She nodded, the movement barely perceptible, but enough. He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. He looked at his mother, at Xia Tian, his gaze encompassing everyone in the room. I declare that you are officially married, he said, his voice resonating with authority. He looked down at Xia Xianwan, his gaze softening. From now on, I will definitely not let go of my hand holding you again. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken promises and unforeseen consequences. He could feel the shift in the dynamics, the realignment of alliances. Xia Xiaoguang was gone, banished from their family, her name a curse whispered in hushed tones. Xia Xianwan, once an outsider, was now bound to him, her destiny intertwined with his. And Jisher he glanced towards her, her presence an enigma, her role in their future still shrouded in mystery. Her eyes met his, a flicker of something unreadable passing between them. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his gut, that their story was far from over.